When you think of ketchup, you probably imagine that familiar red bottle sitting on a diner table, waiting to smother a plate of fries or rescue a dry burger. It's sweet, tangy, tomatoey comfort in a squeeze. But what if I told you that ketchup didn't start as a tomato sauce at all? In fact, its earliest versions didn't even involve tomatoes, or anything close. Nope, ketchup actually began its life as a fish sauce. Yep. The sauce you dip your fries in once swam through history, often containing anchovies and fermented fish guts. Suddenly, that squeeze bottle doesn't seem so innocent, right? Let's dive into ketchup's surprisingly fishy past. Right here on History of Food. The word ketchup is believed to originate from the Hokkien Chinese term kê-tsiap, which refers to a fermented fish sauce. Traders in Southeast Asia were making this centuries ago, and it was basically a briny, pungent seasoning that gave food an umami kick. Think of it as the ancestor of modern soy sauce or Worcestershire sauce. European traders traveling through Asia in the 17th century encountered kê-tsiap and thought, "Wow, this stuff slaps." They didn't have soy sauce back home, and salt was the universal flavor booster. So naturally, they tried to bring it back to Europe. Of course, they didn't exactly write down the recipe. Instead, they guessed badly. When Europeans got home, they tried to recreate kê-tsiap with whatever they had lying around. Anchovies? Check. Walnuts? Sure. Toss them in. Mushrooms? Why not? They brewed up all kinds of fermented sauces, most of which probably smelled like a science experiment gone wrong. These sauces were vinegary, salty, and brownish. Not exactly what we'd call appetizing today, but they were popular because they added flavor to otherwise bland meals. Fun fact, mushroom ketchup was actually a big deal in 18th century England. People poured it on everything, from roasted meats to pies. So if you were sitting down at a fancy English dinner table in the 1700s, chances are you'd see a jug of mushroom ketchup, not tomato ketchup. Fries wouldn't come along for another century anyway. Tomatoes didn't join the ketchup party until much later. In fact, Europeans were suspicious of tomatoes for centuries, calling them poison apples. The plant is part of the nightshade family, and its leaves are toxic. Wealthy folks who ate tomatoes off pewter plates sometimes got sick from lead poisoning, which didn't exactly help the tomato's reputation. But by the early 19th century in America, tomatoes finally started gaining respect. And with them came tomato-based ketchup recipes. The first known published tomato ketchup recipe appeared in 1812, courtesy of a scientist named James Mees. He described tomatoes as love apples, which sounds romantic until you realize he was basically making proto-Heinz ketchup in his lab. His version was spiced, tangy, and, importantly, free of fish guts. Once tomatoes entered the scene, there was no going back. Tomato ketchup was fresher, tastier, and less, let's say, aromatic than its fishy predecessor. By the mid-1800s, American cookbooks were full of tomato ketchup recipes, and homemade batches were common in kitchens. But there was a problem. Early ketchups weren't exactly shelf-stable. They spoiled quickly, and some shady manufacturers cut corners with unsafe preservatives like coal tar or even formaldehyde. Nothing says yum like dipping your fries into a sauce with the same ingredients used to embalm bodies. Enter Henry J. Heinz. In 1876, he launched the first commercial tomato ketchup under his brand, promising it was pure, fresh, and free of harmful additives. His recipe used ripe tomatoes, vinegar, sugar, and a blend of spices, and it was shelf-stable. That was a game changer. Heinz also marketed his ketchup with a level of confidence and branding genius that still defines the company today. Suddenly, ketchup wasn't just a condiment, it was a household essential. By the early 20th century, Heinz had turned ketchup into one of the most recognizable products in America, and the fishy origins were all but forgotten. It's interesting to note that early tomato ketchups weren't as sweet as today's version. They leaned more on spices like cloves, cinnamon, and cayenne. The modern ketchup we know, the sugary, smooth, kid-friendly version, didn't really solidify until the 20th century, when sugar became cheap and palates leaned sweeter. So next time you dunk your fries, remember, what you're tasting is the result of centuries of experimentation, flavor tweaks, and cultural exchanges. And thankfully, none of it involves anchovy brine anymore. Now here's the twist. While it may sound strange that ketchup started as fermented fish juice, the concept isn't all that bizarre when you think about it. Today, we still use condiments like Worcestershire sauce, which, surprise, contains anchovies. We also use Asian fish sauce in stir-fries, curries, and soups. These sauces are flavor bombs that bring depth and umami. In a way, ketchup's fishy past makes sense. It was just another stop along humanity's never-ending quest to make bland food taste better. We've always been fermenting, spicing, and saucing our way to happiness. Once tomato ketchup took off, it spread like wildfire. In America, it became the go-to partner for burgers, hot dogs, and fries. In other countries, though, ketchup has adapted to local tastes. For example, in the Philippines, banana ketchup became popular during World War II when tomatoes were scarce. Today, it's still a staple there, sweeter, fruitier, and often dyed red to look like tomato ketchup. Meanwhile, in Japan, ketchup worked its way into dishes like omurice, a fried rice omelet topped with ketchup. In Eastern Europe, people mix ketchup into stews or serve it with pasta. Basically, ketchup went from fish sauce to international superstar in a few hundred years. Not bad for a condiment with such humble beginnings. Learning that ketchup once involved fish guts might feel like discovering your favorite pop song was originally a death metal track. But honestly, it's just another quirky reminder of how food evolves. Today's ketchup is safe, tomato-based, and sweet enough to make kids happy. Its fishy past is more of a fun fact than a reason to ditch the bottle in your fridge. If anything, it connects ketchup to a broader global tradition of umami-packed condiments. Without its fishy ancestors, who knows if we'd even have the ketchup we love today? So there you have it. Ketchup didn't start as the tomato red hero of burgers and fries. It began as a pungent fish sauce in Asia, transformed into mushroom and walnut brews in Europe, and finally found its forever home in tomatoes, thanks to America's culinary experiments. Heinz polished it up, bottled it, and made sure it would never again smell like the bottom of a fishing boat. The next time you casually drizzle ketchup on your fries, you're enjoying the result of centuries of culinary trial and error, trade, and innovation. What started with fish guts turned into one of the world's most beloved condiments. That, my friends, is the surprising truth about ketchup's fishy past. If you enjoyed this video, please check out our other bingeable channels. Thank you for watching. If you have suggestions for our next video, feel free to share them in the comments below. We'll be sure to give you an acknowledgement for your contribution.